Hello and welcome, everybody, to today's webinar, Exploring Business Opportunities within NATO. The clock is 3 and we're going to start, so I hope that you're all ready. Maybe you've got a cup of coffee. If you're interested in exploring business opportunities opened up by the recent NATO alliance, the membership from Finland and Sweden, you've come to the right place. My name is Helen Sundqvist. I'm the Communications Manager at Norrbotten Chamber of Commerce. I'm going to take a couple of minutes just to talk to you about Norrbotten Chamber of Commerce. We are the hosts of today's webinar. We're an independent business organization run and driven by our member companies. We have around 330 member companies that employ around 28,000, and then they have a combined annual turnover of 132 billion Swedish crowns. They range from micro and small companies to large multinational companies in all sectors. We work on behalf of our members to strengthen the region's business community, to promote a prosperous business environment, influence decision-making, and speaking on behalf of enterprise in Europe. We have meetings with stakeholders, hold roundtable discussions, carry out studies, participate in societal debates, have a continuous dialogue with decision makers, politicians and authorities, and serve as a referral body for legislation in the numerous areas. We also have a lot of advocacy based on questions that are important for our member companies. We work primarily within 3 different focus areas, as you can see on the screen. It's infrastructure, international trade, and skills and human capital. You will learn a little bit more about Norrbotten from my colleague Sabrina shortly. To introduce you to the region where we work, here is a short little film.
Do you remember when we used to run away through the night? There is a story about us two, and it's written about me and you. Nothing can bring us down, 'cause we are together now. Not even time can stop us now, 'cause we are forever young. Do you remember how we used to run against the morning sun? Nothing can bring us down, 'cause we are together now. Not even time can stop us now, 'cause we are forever young. Nothing can bring us down, 'cause we are together now. Nothing can bring us down, 'cause we are together now.
So, some formalities before we start today's webinar. As I said earlier, today's webinar is hosted by Norrbotten Chamber of Commerce. The webinar obviously is held in English. You can take part in the live during the webinar, or you can see the recording afterwards. During the webinar, we encourage you to ask questions. Please do so in the chat. And also, kind reminder to please make sure that your video and microphone are off during the entire webinar. Being an ally in NATO opens up new business opportunities. In the coming years, we'll see a repositioning of NATO forces across the entire European continent. This also entails a significant increase in the demands for both services and equipment, and presents not just an opportunity for you to grow your business, but also an opportunity for companies to aid in the collective security of the NATO allied countries. Today, we will hear from expert Jukka Mattikainen, Managing Director at Nordic Trading House, about the business opportunities and the needs, the how-tos and NATO procurement processes, as well as successful business strategies and much more. We will also hear about best practices and company cases from Finland, Norway, and Estonia that already have done successful business with defense country forces in the NATO member countries. I will now turn over to my colleague, Sabrina, and she will tell you a little bit more about the business opportunities in Norrbotten. Welcome.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Sabrina Suiken. I work as an international business manager at the Norrbotten Chamber of Commerce. And I would like to take the moment to just talk a little bit about Norrbotten and from the Arctic Europe perspective before we give the word to Jukka, our expert, about the exploring business opportunities with NATO from the North American perspective. We are at the top of the Europe in the Arctic Europe and especially in Norrbotten, strategically placed also from the military and geopolitical perspective. And that's why we would also like to zoom in a little bit and see what is happening up here. The green sustainable transition is not only happening in the northern part of Sweden, but also in northern parts of Finland and Norway. That is, we have a lot of synergies, we have great opportunities, but also challenges that we share. We are around 2.5 million people living in this area. We have long distances, but we have close relations to people. So we are good in cooperation and knowing that in a global perspective, we are often very small if we don't cooperate with each other. So synergies are great for us in the Arctic Europe. The investment volume at the moment is 1,450 billion kroners in the northern part of Sweden, and 1,050 of those are in Norrbotten, in our region, the northernmost region in Sweden. Infrastructure is, of course, very important for us what comes to international trade. But it is also important from the geopolitical perspective and also from the NATO perspective, now that both Finland, Sweden, and Norway are members in this alliance. And the east-western connection is becoming even more important now with the memberships. For us, the cross-border cooperation has always been really important, but probably even more important now with this new global contexts and also the geopolitical context. And we have a lot of areas where and sectors where we can cooperate, not only the infrastructure and energy sectors, but also within global competence and skills. Just to give a picture about us up north, we are only 250,000 people in Norrbotten. But if we zoom in and zoom out and look at the northern areas, both in northern parts of Finland, Sweden, and Norway, then we are, as I mentioned earlier, 2.5 million people. So there's also a lot of companies that can cooperate with each other. Norrbotten is at 25% of the Sweden's total area, but only 2.5% of the population. We are an area that is not that often influenced by the economic changes, so to say. Our companies are good in international trade and also export intensive. And that means also that often, even during the hard times, our companies are good in finding new opportunities. As I mentioned, we are an export-intensive area, and of course, European Union countries and our closest neighbors are important markets that our companies work with. But USA is also one of the 5 most important ones, and Canada is coming quite after there, even for the reason that Sweden and Canada nowadays also have a free trade agreement. That means also that we see more and more companies doing business between Canada and Sweden. Norrbotten is good in international trade, and our companies have been good in trading even through the hard times, as I mentioned. And during the pandemic years, we had a growth of 32% of the export, the value of exported goods in Norrbotten. And around 65% of Sweden's export of mineral and metal goods come from Norrbotten, and 90% of the iron ore extracted is also from Norrbotten within the European Union. You can also mention that 50% of the total tonnage of goods is going in between Luleå and Narvik harbors or ports in the northern part of Sweden. And the eastern-western connection is really important, not only for the trade, but as I mentioned, also from the geopolitical perspective and the security reasons nowadays. We have a lot of goods going there, as I mentioned, and mineral goods are, of course, one of those that we mostly export from Norrbotten. But wood, pulp, and paper goods are also, of course, a big part of our export in Norrbotten. Just to mention a couple of our companies that have been working cross borders and also towards Canada and United States that Jukka will talk more about today, connection to the NATO membership. We have a lot of companies also working within digitalization and security, cybersecurity, and all kinds of processing and automation solutions. So what comes to the security side of things, there are a lot of companies in Norrbotten that also are or excel in those areas. In 2022, we also got the Swedish government's award for the export region of the year, and that is not only for the reason that we are good in cooperating, but also for the reason that our companies are very exceptionally good in trade activities and doing international trade cross borders. Not only with Finland and Norway that are our closest countries and closest markets, but also with other markets like the Northern America. The reason why we are here today is partly for the reason that we are working with trade promotion in our chamber since 2018, and it is part of the Swedish trade strategy and our way of supporting companies in Norrbotten in different kind of activities when it comes to cross-border trade. We cooperate, of course, with other actors also, but today we are hearing more from Jukka that has been also partner in these kind of activities where we have been helping companies on the Canadian market. Through this financing that we can receive from the European Union Development Fund, we also have the possibility to support internationalization of companies in Norrbotten. And for those that are interested in that kind of structured help, you can go to our website, Norrbottens Handelskammare.se, and find more information in our calendar about the call that is coming for the fall from September, when you can also seek support for your internationalization going forward. We work, of course, with global goals what comes to international trade and business development, since that is part of the value chain also for the green transition in the Norrbotten area and also in northern Sweden. But just to put the international and green sustainable transition in a global context, I would like to mention especially the relation that close relation that it has also for geopolitics and infrastructure, as mentioned earlier, but also that the NATO membership brings new opportunities for our companies also from the civil side that Jukka will also talk a little bit more about and give examples about today. International trade is important for us in Norrbotten especially, but our trade and GDP ratio is also important for the whole of Sweden and EU as a whole. So what is good for Norrbotten is also good for the whole of Sweden and the European Union. What we see is as the key to success is coordination, cooperation, and co-planning. And that is something that we see more and more of, especially between our northern partners in Finland and Norway. And I think this webinar will also showcase the good examples and new opportunities that will arise from closer cooperation between our companies and countries. Just to give some heads up for upcoming events, we have several trade talks coming. The closest one is about France, and for fall we will also talk about Spain, for example, besides this trade webinar that we have today. And for those that are chamber members at our chamber, there's also the annual meeting upcoming this May. And next week, we will also work together with Invest in Norrbotten with B2B matchmaking, for example, at the Demo Summit that will talk about the transition that is happening up here in northern Sweden. So please feel free to contact us. Go to our webpage to see the upcoming events and internationalization support for fall. And contact us if you have any questions even after this webinar. And please write your questions during the webinar on the chat so we can take them afterwards when Jukka is done with his part. So with that, I would like to introduce Jukka as our expert, talking more about exploring business opportunities with NATO from the North American perspective. And give the word to him. We are very thankful for you, Jukka, being here because we know it's really early morning for you in Canada.
No problem. So good morning and afternoon to everybody. First of all, I have to thank all the people who have helped spread the message about this webinar. This project has been very exciting in many aspects, especially because national defense is a very timely topic in Europe. And Swedish and Finnish NATO memberships will open up lots of opportunities for Nordic companies. So if you have any questions about the presentation, write them in the chat box and I will answer them after the presentation. So before we go in the topic itself, I would like to introduce myself and our company. It won't take more than 3 minutes, so bear with me. So before the introduction, I would like to thank Norrbottens Handelskammare and especially Sabrina for being a great partner in the past projects and also for being supportive in putting this webinar together and spreading the message to ensure good participation. So in today's presentation, we will look into NATO and then followed by deep dives into Department of Defense in the US and then Canadian Department of National Defense. This presentation will take roughly 40 minutes and then we will have some time for questions. So we cover lots of data, but you can always read the slides afterward as this session is recorded. So if somebody hasn't heard about us, we are a small company based out of Vancouver, Canada. We are a team of 5 people and we help Nordic B2B companies with their business development needs in the US and Canadian markets. Our business development approach is sales-centric, targeting results, and the approach is heavily relying on data, and the sales approach is consultative. So in our projects, we put lots of efforts into researching companies and understanding them, and today you will get a good idea of what does this mean. So I would like to say a few words about myself. I have a master's degree in industrial engineering and master's degree in business. I'm originally from Finland and have been abroad since 2011. I worked in Finland, Australia, the UK, and currently I'm here in Vancouver. I started my career in strategy and business development and then transitioned into strategic marketing, product marketing, business development, technical direct sales roles, and then my last corporate role was with 3M in distribution sales. For the last 3 years, I have been running a Nordic Trading House where I can combine many of the skills learned in the past. Roughly 60% of our clients are companies with revenue ranging typically between a few million euros and a few hundred million euros. We have worked for over 30 organizations in the last 3 years, and their industry vary a lot from seaport technology to mining, construction, machinery, pulp and paper, and so on. Then we do work for public organizations. Typically, our customers hire us to identify prospective clients and reach out to them. Half of the projects are more typical market research projects where our clients want to understand the market and its dynamics. The purpose of this study is to give an overall view of the opportunities for Nordic companies, especially with NATO organizations, the US Department of Defense, and the Canadian Department of National Defense. I will also share examples of Nordic or relatable companies that have been successful with NATO. Here are a couple of points that I would like to highlight before we get going here. The NATO memberships in 2024 and 2023, an increasing demand for military equipment due to the Russian attack on Ukraine in 2022, will increase business opportunities for Nordic companies. Some sectors in NATO procurement, for example, cybersecurity procurement, are only for suppliers located in NATO member countries. Many other sectors prefer suppliers from NATO member countries. The study is mostly done with publicly available information. So let's move on to the first chapter, which gives an overview of NATO. During this project, we identified many types of opportunities, and here is a quick overview of what those potential customer types are and what can be sold. Naturally, Swedish and Finnish companies can sell to NATO or NATO agencies. Also, member countries of NATO, and more specifically, departments of defense, can be the client. Each NATO member country has its own defense department, which may engage in procurement activities either independently or in cooperation with NATO. For some companies, the opportunity is to become a subcontractor and to sell to main contractors, or alternatively, sell to subcontractors and be a subcontractor, or even further down in the value chain. Swedish defense material industry has been very strong after the Second World War. Since 2014, the export has been in rapid increase. Dual-use item export is at least 2 to 3 times higher than military equipment export, but there is no accurate data about dual-use item export because much of it takes place without any license. Inspektionen för strategiska produkter, ISP, is the organization which contracts with companies in export licenses, notifications, and other regulatory affairs. Its export control covers goods and technology that for defense, security, or foreign policy reasons may be sensitive to export or otherwise transfer abroad. On this slide, we have collected the largest Swedish military equipment exporters. Because of much of the dual-use item export takes place without any license, the companies in this slide probably represents less than half of the large defense equipment exporters. In Sweden, export licenses and notifications were in rapid increase in 2023. Combat material export has had a particularly strong increase in 2022 and 2023, but all kinds of exports have increased. Export licenses are often required when exporting defense material to countries like China, India, and South Korea. Most typical technologies requiring export licenses are Category 2, so material processing, and Category 5, telecommunications and information security. There is quite good statistical data available on defense goods exports from most European countries. The details of the statistics vary by country, but conclusions can be made from the export target countries. Sweden has several large global military equipment manufacturers, and most of Swedish export goes outside European Union, NATO members. Dual-use material means that material is for both military and civil use. Public information available on the export of dual-use goods is very scarce, and one of the challenges is that dual-use goods are not statistically recorded separately. In the previous slide was mentioned that ISP-controlled dual-use item export is 2 to 3 times higher than military equipment export, because much of dual-use item export takes place without ISP control. The total dual-use item export is even higher. NATO consists of 32 member states. NATO's budget is about 5.6 billion euros, which is less than 1% of the sum of the defense budgets of NATO countries. NATO membership increases the business opportunities of many defense industry organizations. Of course, membership helps the sales to NATO organizations. For example, cybersecurity purchases must be made from NATO countries. In the future, opportunities offered by NATO will increase significantly as the $1 billion NATO Innovation Fund is established. This fund focuses on supporting dual-use product innovations. The last time I checked, the fund was not yet operational, so its significance is still a little early to evaluate. Of course, 1 billion euros is a very large sum compared to previous NATO activities. NATO membership also allows organizations under member governments access to study NATO standards. Therefore, businesses in NATO countries may be better informed of the details of NATO standards than those in non-member countries. The graph shows the combined defense budget of European NATO countries and Canada. Approximately since the end of the Cold War, the defense budget was historically low in 2014 when Russia annexed Crimea and eastern Ukraine. Since then, defense budgets have been clearly on the rise, and the war started by Russia 2 years ago has further accelerated the growth of defense budgets. From the table, we see that the US defense budget is on a completely different scale compared to the defense budgets of other NATO countries. Canada's defense budget was very low for a long time, but it is growing rapidly. The US is also increasing its defense budget. In addition to the defense budget, the share of equipment procurement and product development is particularly large. For the US Armed Forces, Canada has traditionally had a very small share of this, but the share of equipment procurement and product development in Canada's defense budget is growing rapidly. Some insights into NATO procurements are compiled on this slide. First, a prerequisite for NATO suppliers is to meet the required security standards. Typically, these standards are granted by the supplier's home country. International competitive bidding, ICB, is the most common form of procurement. The second most typical form of procurement is called the best value. Notification of intent, NOI, is the first public step into NATO project competitions. The NATO Support and Procurement Agency, NSPA, is clearly the most significant procurement-making NATO organization from the perspective of a Swedish supplier. The NSPA acquires solutions for logistics, operations, and other service needs. The NATO Communications and Information NCI agency is another important procurement-making actor. It particularly acquires communications and information technology, and cybersecurity procurements play a crucial role. We collected some figures that give an estimation on how much they spend. The figures are not very comparable, as some organizations' procurements are largely related to military supplies and others to services related to, for example, accommodation. However, the figures show that NSPA makes by far the most procurements of all NATO organizations. We looked into NSPA spending a bit closer, and we found out that 1.7 billion euros go to life cycle management. This is related to air defense, missile defense, communication technology, and many other things listed on the slide. Finnish and Swedish companies have been supplying their goods to the NSPA for a long time. However, companies from NATO members, Norway and Denmark, have made significantly more deliveries. Obviously, this can be a result of multiple reasons. NSPA has awarded contracts to 61 companies located in Nordic countries and Estonia. Among them, Norway and Denmark have the biggest number of vendors. Contracts for 2015-2023 can be found on the NSP webpage. The same companies often have several different contracts with NSPA. On average, the Swedish and contractors in comparative countries have had 2 contracts with NSPA during the last 6 years. 9 Finnish companies have won NSPA biddings in the last 5 years. Many of these firms are only a few million in revenue, but have been around typically for at least 10 years, and many of them multiple decades. The product range that NSPA has bought from Finnish companies is quite wide, starting from military skis to ammunition, medical equipment, and vehicle spare parts, and so on. The Estonian defense industry is very young and companies are small. Even the later presented Milrem Robotics is a company of only 10 million euros in revenue, even though it has sold its products to the defense forces of 16 different countries and collaborates with many defense giants, starting from Lockheed Martin. The largest Estonian firm on the list is Bristol Trust LLC, which has sold footwear, clothes, and face masks to NSPA. Among the Swedish exporters are very large and traditional firms like BAE Systems, Bofors AB, and Saab Dynamics AB. Especially for Sweden, the given years of establishment are indicative. It refers to the year when the company was established in its current form. For instance, Bofors, which currently operates under BAE Systems, was established back in the 17th century. In Denmark, there are numerous smaller companies that have supplied goods and services to NSPA. Reliable public information about the revenue of Danish and Norwegian small businesses is not available, so the size is estimated based on the info found on LinkedIn. A few more Danish companies, but let's skip these to save time. Kongsberg is a gigantic Norwegian defense company that owns, among other things, 49.9% of Patria and 50% of Nammo. In addition, many global companies operate in Norway, which are not actually Norwegian companies. This slide shows Airbus, headquartered in Germany, Clunder International Bunkering from the United Arab Emirates, and the Canadian Heli One. Nammo is a Norwegian company with some Finnish ownership through Patria. In addition, many companies appears to be small in terms of headcount, but still have been able to sell to NSPA, which is very encouraging news. We thought it would be great to bring up a Finnish success story. In 2021, NSPA published an RFP for military skis. You can still see all the documentation in the NSPA portal. It had all requirements and even photos of the skis they would like to buy. This bidding was a framework agreement that all NATO countries can take advantage of. The contract was awarded to Finnish companies called KSFA Sports Oy, which provides skis, and the poles are provided by Peltonen Ski Oy. The total contract value exceeds 11 million euros, and the contract period is from 2023 till 2025. Another NATO organization providing lots of opportunities is NATO Communication and Information Agency, NCIA. NCIA has several projects in information, communication technology, and cyber technology. They awarded 500 million euros worth of contracts in 2021. This slide has 51 current NCIA programs. NATO organizations have several interesting forums, conferences, trade shows, and programs for member countries' military equipment industry. So those are worth of checking out if you're interested. Here are a few trade shows that are worth to be mentioned. AUSA is the biggest industry trade show in the US, and CANSEC is in Canada. In Europe, Eurosatory is the largest, and it is also one of the world's largest. NATO Innovation Challenge provides marketing opportunities for SMEs. The Innovation Challenge was organized in 2016-2020 by NATO Communications and Information Organization. Since 2021, Allied Command Transformation has organized NATO Innovation Challenge. The awards are not more than thousands of dollars for winners, but several companies have experienced increased exposure after participating NATO Innovation Challenge. FieldMade AS is one example of a company gaining visibility through NATO Innovation Challenge. The most hyped product is Nomad 3, which is shown in the picture. 3D printers have special requirements in field area. The company was founded in 2016. It participated in NATO Innovation Challenge in 2019 and have got interesting partnerships since then. Let's move on and have a closer look at the US market and its opportunities. The Department of Defense, which is usually shortened as DoD, has a total budget of $272 billion for procurement and R&D, testing and evaluation. Navy and Air Force have the biggest award applications worth $84 billion. Most of the new DoD investments are for large armament systems, for aircraft, sea power, and nuclear enterprise modernization. Probably only a few European companies can compete in such contracts as contractors. As contractors from Nordic perspective, the opportunities are in the value chain as a subcontractor or even further in the value chain. There have been lots of complaints about bureaucracy in the US Department of Defense. It typically takes at least 18 months of planning before a government contractor wins their first contract. It's not uncommon for small businesses to spend hundreds of hours and hundreds of thousands of dollars developing proposals that they don't win. Foreign companies have to find their own way in the complicated regulation domain, while US SMEs get lots of help from small business professionals and procurement technical assistance centers. To qualify as a US SME for most federal contracting purposes, a company can be a subsidiary of a foreign firm as long as certain criteria are met. USA has no official offset policy in military purchases, but legislation creates situations similar to offset trade. The most important legislation is Buy American Act and Berry Amendment. The most important points are given on this slide. Of course, legislation is never particularly easy to interpret, and every specific legal case has its own interpretations and exceptions. Since the last couple of years, US governmental contracts have been awarded through sam.gov. There is instructions how to register. The company needs NCAGE code, which is available for companies of NATO member countries with a DUNS number. Usually NCAGE number is given by Ministry of Defense of the member country of the company. Dunn's number is given by Dun and Bradstreet. The defense sector has consolidated, and it's considered a challenge from DoD perspective. DoD is making efforts to increase competition and build domestic capacity. Large defense industry of the US provide lots of subcontracting opportunities, as 60 to 70% of defense work is performed by subcontractors. This slide are listed the top 50 contractors of DoD. Sales of weapon systems to the DoD are dominated by a small group of contractors, and 51 companies annually sell goods and services worth over $1 billion each. The consolidation of defense industrial base leads to high share of non-competitive contracting. Currently, only half of the contracts are under competitive bidding. Especially technologies lacking contractors are procured through sole source contracting. These technologies are, for example, major systems, the missiles and munition sector, Army appropriate lithium batteries, and microelectronics. Here is an interesting subcontractor example from Norway. Axnes is a small company spreading around the globe with strong partners. They sell advanced and highly durable wireless intercom solutions to Airbus, Leonardo, Sikorsky, and Bell. Their solutions are designed to perform in extreme conditions and on a wide variety of platforms, including aircraft, ground, and maritime. Axnes is heavily expanding into military markets and is currently active in 4 DoD homeland security programs. Axnes is offering its equipment widely throughout NATO. Here's a second subcontractor example, and it's from Estonia. Milrem Robotics products have been sold to 16 countries before the 10th birthday of the company. They claim to be a European leading robotics and autonomous systems developer and system integrator. Also, Milrem has strong partners like Kinetic North America since 2016, MBDA since 2019, Lockheed Martin since 2019, and Kongsberg since 2022. Company has 200 employees worldwide, and the headcount is expected to increase by 100 personnel by 2024 this year. Here's a quick overview of the description of DoD's contracting process. On the right side, you can see all the agencies of DoD. Unfortunately, today we don't have time to go through all this. So let's move on to the Canadian market. In Canada, DoD equivalent organization is called the Department of National Defence. The largest new military equipment investments are on expensive modern technology, including aircraft, sea power, and missile defense systems. NORAD is a combined organization of the US and Canadian Defence Force, focusing on mostly protecting Arctic areas. They might be the most promising business opportunity for Nordic companies. NORAD includes different technologies in air, land, sea, and space, advanced all-domain surveillance and intelligence systems, modernized command, control, and communications, improved capabilities to deter and defeat threats, increased research, development, and innovation, new satellites built to track moving targets on the ground, and top-secret series of remote sensors. Canada has a 100% offset policy on all procurements over $100 million based on the Industrial and Technological Benefits Policy, ITB. Smaller contracts may not require 100% offset, but in practice, Canadian local manufacturing is considered very helpful in gaining contracts. Despite the ITB policy, 21% of contractors are neither Canadian nor from the US. Small contracts are considered less complicated by Canadian bureaucracy, enabling a more lenient procurement process, and $5 million is a limit that defines the procurement process. Canada Buys is the new online procurement tool of D&D, making participating in competitive bidding easier than before. The complete transition from buy and sell to Canada Buys was executed in the summer of 2022. So tender opportunities can be accessed without registration at canadabuys.canada.ca. The Defense Capabilities Blueprint is an interactive online tool providing industry access to defense investment information, facilitating research, development planning, and the formation of strategic partnership based on the project's needs of the forces. Here's an example of a success story with Department of National Defense. Sacco is a Finnish company, but owned by an Italian company, Beretta. Sacco has been very successful in exporting their products. Their sniper rifles have been sold to 31 countries. 2 years ago, Canadian Department of National Defense procured 229 sniper rifles, and the deal was worth $2.6 million. Also, Sacco needed a Canadian partner, Sturger Canada. It is a subsidiary of Sturger, which is a US company that belongs to the Beretta Group. So let's stay on Sacco, but jump back on a US example. Sacco was considered a very strong tenderer in DoD sniper rifle bidding in 2009. This slide gives the path of the bidding, which started with DoD market research in 2008. Based on market research, 10-point list of criteria was published. 9 tenders participated, and in 2013, Remington announced that the modular sniper rifle had won the contract worth $79.7 million, and it was for 5,150 rifles. Here's a top 50 list of Canadian defense companies. On this list, there are lots of subsidiaries of foreign companies, as we can see. So now we are getting closer to the end, and let's move on to the quick summary of opportunities. The NATO Support and Procurement Agency, NSPA, is arguably the most significant NATO organization involved in equipment procurement. NATO organizes several annual trade shows and meetings that offer marketing opportunities for SMEs. The forthcoming billion euro NATO Innovation Hub is projected to present a great opportunity once established. The Department of Defense, DoD, is by far the largest Department of Defense globally, offering numerous contracting opportunities and subcontracting opportunities in contractor value chains. In the US, for foreign SMEs, winning direct contracts can be challenging due to the high level of bureaucracy and the complex nature of many contracts. US companies and subsidiaries can receive assistance from DoD's organizations, making contracts for Nordic companies more challenging, of course, as the competition is higher. The Department of National Defense, D&D, has experienced a budget increase after years of financial stagnation. A significant new investment is the planned $38.6 billion over 20 years for NORAD, incorporating various technologies across air, land, sea, and space domains, provided it goes ahead. So that was the last chapter of our study, and now some of you might be interested in some of these opportunities and think, what's next? So bear with me one more slide. So project and services can be divided into three categories. Creating a prospect database is suitable for self-reliant companies that intend to contact businesses on their own or with the help of a distributor or with us. The second service is to understand the market. You just saw a general presentation topic, but for your business, there might be some specific information needs. So we are happy to help further in that if needed. The last service is a business development project that is a combination of the 1 and 2 and beyond. We can also do test marketing, set appointments with clients, help making sales materials to meet North American standards, and arrange road shows to meet prospective clients. So thank you for taking the time to listen to this presentation. We have put lots of time and effort into this study, so we are happy to provide this. But as an exchange, we would like to get 15 minutes of your time and have a quick meeting. Those who haven't met us before, it would be great to get to know you and your business. And those who we already know, it would be great to catch up and update the latest news. There is a link to book a meeting with me. There are 15-minute and 30-minute slots. And I have made lots of slots available, so you can book a meeting with me. For the local companies, for Norrbotten's area, please reach out to Sabrina first, and then she will hook us up and set up a meeting. And those companies outside of the area can directly reach out to me through that link that I will post shortly. So that tidycall.com/Jukka Matikainen, and you can access my calendar there. So now I'm happy to answer the questions, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Jukka. I feel like there's a myriad of information and a lot to understand when doing business with NATO member companies, especially if we're talking about the US. Do we have any questions? We haven't really received anything right now. I have some questions. So maybe we can start with me, and please type away if you have any questions. For small, medium enterprises, is there a sector or business area or a product that's like a certain area of interest? If you look at, I don't know how familiar you are with Norrbotten, but we have, for instance, in security technology. Is there something that you can pinpoint that is more interesting?
Yes, good question. Thank you. So I think let's start from the basics. So understanding where you can win the business, and of course, small and medium-sized companies have limited resources. So I think understanding the value chain is a key. So that being a subcontractor, as some of the company examples where they're, I think targeting down the value chain. I think that's the key. In terms of organization to target, I think public private companies are easier targets and easier to get business going with them. So I think the research where you are very good at and the high level of innovation, I think it's feasible to win business, but it takes time. But I would focus on definitely private companies down in the value chain. But to pinpoint any specific industries, I think it's company specific. I cannot tell where really to focus on, but the NSPA is a good one if you want to directly to work with the NATO organization. But definitely please set up a meeting with me, and we can discuss more in detail where the opportunities might be for your business.
Is there a most common mistake? Is there something that is reoccurring when starting to branching out and starting to do business? Is there a common mistake that you can see?
Yeah, well, of course, I've been dealing with many Nordic companies, and sometimes some companies might rush to North America a bit too early without having good references in Europe. I think that's a key thing, to have good references in place, so that helps to speed up the process of getting business in North America. So that's definitely a one. And then doing a homework, it's very, very key to understand the market before reaching out to those companies. Otherwise, you might lose your credibility before the business conversation even have started. I think those are the two things, and maybe underestimating the time to get the business going. So there were some examples that have taken lots of time and resources, and there is no gain. So even that Saco example in the US, lots of time and effort was put there, but they lost opportunity. So don't underestimate how much resources and time are needed to win some remarkable business. But of course, if we get in, the gain is huge.
Excellent. Is there any cultural faux pas? So like I'm thinking that, it's not just doing business globally, but it's also the military aspect of it. Is there anything that Swedish companies that tend to be non-hierarchical needs to be aware of?
Yeah, the level of bureaucracy, of course, is way more in North America, and many things are lacking behind and how things are done. So I think that's definitely better to get used to. So I would say overall North America is lacking 20 years behind Europe in many aspects. Military, some segments can be different naturally, but how things are done are way slower. But I would say that communication perspective, it's very important to act quick when you are asked something or provide information. So there's that stickiness overall in the process, but when you are asked something, then you need to react quick. And especially with some Finnish companies, I feel that responsiveness is not the level what especially US companies are expecting. So there are some aspect of those, and then of course some organizations are more hierarchical. Swedish companies are less formal, and I can say the same for Finnish companies. So there are some pitfalls, and we can discuss more details in one-on-one meetings. My experiences in other industries, but also something that I have gained during this NATO project.
Thank you. Do you have any questions, Rina?
I was thinking, Jukka, a little bit about if you can see some change or development from the Finnish side since the NATO membership has been in force for a longer period than the Swedish one. What are the differences or the opportunities that have arisen from that? And can you see that there are more activities or more companies seeking these opportunities from the Finnish side, and can the Swedish companies somehow learn from that experience that the Finnish ones already have?
Yeah, so personally, the NATO membership of Finland is quite new as well, but something that I mentioned briefly during the presentation, that this has opened up some new opportunities for Finnish companies, but the business has been possible in the past with NATO members and some organizations. But like cybersecurity, the companies providing these solutions need to be in NATO member countries. I would say that the biggest benefit of this NATO membership is the awareness that Finland has been a member, and then that reputation and maybe not credibility, but these countries are more keen on buying services from allied countries and from other companies from other NATO countries. So I think that's the biggest benefit. And then from Finnish perspective, the companies are more aware of the opportunities and more keen on exploring these opportunities, but haven't seen concrete examples of that somebody have really started pushing these NATO opportunities now after the last year. But I think it will come though.
And I think also the geographical situation for us in Norrbotten makes it also interesting to find these cooperations for the Finnish and Swedish and Norwegian parts to, for example, within the infrastructure that is needed in the east-western side that also falls into the NATO opportunities, so to say. So for us up north, it's really important to see what can we gain from these strategic partnerships and finding new opportunities together when we have this alliance that unites us in a different way than earlier or historically at least. I would also like to tip about the earlier trade talk that we have about Canada that Jukka actually told more about the cultural differences. So if you are interested in knowing more about how to adapt to the Canadian market and how to prepare, that's also a good webinar to go back to and listen to know more about that. It has been a joy to work with you and with our companies from Norrbotten, for the reason that you have helped them also to prepare the way that you mentioned earlier. So I think we should encourage more companies to take that kind of support when they are going to a new market and preparing for new opportunities.
So we have a question. Sorry, Jukka.
Yeah, maybe one comment that came to my mind. So I was on a call yesterday with one trade commissioner, and he was pointing out that especially Finland and Sweden has competitive advantage some of these Arctic security topics. So definitely we have lots of expertise in Arctic environments, things working in Arctic environments. So definitely we have the credibility in those kind of opportunities. So definitely NORAD and the Arctic security, Arctic things, that's definitely something to look into if you have products and services that have competitive advantage in those environments. So that was just a comment that came to my mind.
Thank you, Jukka. As I said, we have a question. We have Ida from FlashEye, it's a startup scale-up in the security tech industry. So how does the US and Canada view scale-up and startups? Are they provided with the same opportunities, I guess is the question.
That's a good question. So what we noticed that is the innovation challenge competition seems to be the way of accessing those organizations, like some of the smaller SMEs, they got in by attending the innovation competitions, and then some of these bigger defense forces got interesting, heard about, and got some business. So I would say overall, it's very, very difficult to get directly into touch with those DoD and DND. The bureaucracy is so exhausting, and it really can take hundreds of hours of bidding something, and then also hundreds of thousands of dollars to get some legal advice and get through the hoops and loops. So that's definitely a challenge. So I would encourage getting the exposure from those competitions, and they are, based on my understanding, free of charge to attend, and the money that you can get from those are only a few thousands of dollars, so that won't financially help you, but the exposure can be worth of a lot. So overall, as an SME, I wouldn't go directly to any of these public organizations.
Thank you. I hope that answered your question, Ida. If you want to summarize and do maybe 3 takeaways for companies, like it has to be a general advice, but if you want to, we talked about like best ways in, we talked about common mistakes, we talked about that it requires a lot of time and effort. Do you want to give 3 takeaways to companies interested?
Yeah, sure. I think really understanding the value chains and where you want to be. So I think that's really a key. And finding a good partner. So accessing those players that you identified in the value chain, really getting access through a partner. I think that's a key. So all those examples we shared, pretty much all of them, they had a partner, a successful one. So I think that's another one. And yeah, being smart about it. How do you get the exposure on and get the airtime with these big companies? So the innovation challenges and maybe the trade shows and so on. Maybe that's also something to keep in mind. As a SME, you have limited resources, so you have to be smart about it. I think those three. So understanding the value chain where you want to be, finding a good partner, how to access those, and get this provided and the support, and get through hoops and loops of the procurement, and yeah, and getting the exposure through innovative ways.
Excellent. Thank you. I think that we're going to start to summarize today. Thank you for your time, for both those who participated, but also an extra thank you to Jukka. It's been very valuable, and we've gained some new insights, learned some new stuff. If you're interested in learning more, please feel free to contact Sabrina, my colleague. Maybe you're also interested in learning more about the internationalization support. And if you also want to reach out to Jukka, you're welcome to do so. I want to give a heads up for Trade Talks. Sabrina mentioned it briefly, but on May 30th, we have Trade Talks Go France. So if you're interested in just a market introduction to the French market, please feel free to tune in. You can find all the information on our website. Do you have anything else you want to share? Anything we missed?
Oh, I don't think so. I want to also thank Jukka for sharing the valuable experiences from and examples from earlier companies that have been working with NATO and with the business opportunities. And I think this is a matter that is just in the beginning, so we need to do follow-ups, and please feel free to contact also Jukka directly if you have any questions or need any support for the North American market.
Excellent. Then we're going to finish definitely on time. But so if you have any follow-up, just please reach out to us. And with that, I think we're going to bid you all adieu. Thank you.
Thank you.